Welcome to the Podcast Lab, your go-to space for raw conversations, curious questions, and inspiring stories from around the world. Whether you're here to learn, laugh, or just listen in, this is where ideas take shape and voices come alive. Ready to dive into fresh perspectives and thought-provoking discussions? Let's get started. This is the Podcast Lab. Subscribe now and never miss an episode.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're tackling something pretty heavy but really important, life after loss.
Yeah, it's a universal experience, but also so personal, right?
Exactly. And, you've all sent in some amazing sources, and we're going to dive into those personal stories. We'll hear from some experts too, and hopefully find some, glimmers of hope and healing along the way.
Because it's not about forgetting or moving on, is it?
No, not at all. It's about finding a way to live with that loss and still, experience life fully again.
And what's really cool about this deep dive is we're going to be tailoring it to your journeys.
Yeah.
Using the sources you provided.
Exactly. So let's jump right in with Emily's story.
Okay. So Emily lost her mom unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And she talks about this feeling of like a part of herself is missing.
Oh, yeah.
And I bet a lot of you listening, felt that same disorientation.
Totally. Like a piece of your world is just suddenly gone and you're trying to figure out how to even function.
Right. And it's interesting how Emily found comfort in honoring her mom's memory through these small rituals and acts of kindness.
Yeah. It's like she's keeping her spirit alive.
Mm-hmm. It's powerful, right?
It is. Those little things can mean so much.
Rituals can be so grounding when everything else feels chaotic.
Totally.
They give you structure,
Yeah.
and a tangible way to connect with the person you've lost.
It's so true. I found even simple things like cooking their favorite meal.
Oh, yeah.
Or visiting a place we had a memory. It's like you're carrying a piece of them with you.
Mm-hmm. Keeping that connection alive.
Yeah. What about you? Have you found any rituals or actions that have helped you cope with loss?
Oh, that's such a great question for everyone listening.
Yeah.
Everyone's journey is unique.
Right.
But sharing those experiences can be so powerful.
It really can.
Whether it's, Emily's story or your own personal rituals, it's about finding what brings comfort.
Right.
And helps you navigate all those complex emotions that come with grief.
Okay, so our next source really dives into this idea of healing.
Okay.
And we meet Dr. Mia Thompson, a grief counselor. Mm-hmm.
And she emphasizes something I think is so important, giving yourself permission to feel all the emotions.
Yes. All of them, not just the acceptable ones.
Exactly. We don't have to pretend we're fine.
Right. Because bottling things up or pretending we're okay, it only prolongs the process.
Yeah, you have to acknowledge the wound before you can start to heal it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, you have to feel the sadness, the anger, the guilt. It's all part of it.
It's all part of the process. And Dr. Thompson suggests some really practical things, too, like journaling.
Oh, journaling's fantastic.
To get those thoughts and feelings out of your head.
Yeah, just get it all down on paper.
It's like releasing some of that pressure.
It really is. And it helps you make sense of everything.
Right, because it's all jumbles up in there.
Totally. And she also talks about creating a memory box.
Oh, yeah.
Which I love. It's like a tangible collection of moments and reminders of the person.
I did that after my grandmother passed away.
Wow.
It was just a way to feel connected to her.
Yeah, beautiful. But maybe the most impactful advice from Dr. Thompson is the emphasis on self-compassion.
Oh, absolutely.
Like giving ourselves permission to have a quiet day.
Yes.
Acknowledge when we just feel overwhelmed and just be kind to ourselves during a truly difficult time.
Because grief is exhausting. It's emotionally and physically draining.
It really is.
And there's no timeline,
No.
And it's definitely not linear.
Yeah.
It's, it's ups and downs, good days and bad days.
Absolutely.
About honoring that and being gentle with yourself.
Speaking of unique journeys, our next source introduces us to James, who lost his son 2 years ago.
Okay.
And he talks about this struggle to find meaning in a life that felt forever changed.
That's so common, though, isn't it, after a loss that big?
Yeah, like the foundation of your world has just been shaken.
Right, and you're trying to rebuild a sense of purpose.
And for James, that purpose came from helping others.
Okay.
He got involved with a foundation that supports bereaved parents.
Wow.
And he describes it as turning his pain into something meaningful.
That's incredible. James's story is such a powerful example of how we can take our grief and turn it into something positive.
Yeah.
Like helping others who are going through similar things. It could be so healing,
Right.
for both the giver and the receiver.
It's like a shared understanding.
Exactly. And a reminder that you're not alone in your pain.
So powerful.
It really is. Yeah. It's like finding a way to keep their light shining, even if it's in a different way.
Makes you think, how might you find purpose in helping others even while you're dealing with your own grief?
It's a good question to think about. Maybe it's volunteering or sharing your story or even just being there for someone who's struggling.
Even small things can make a difference.
Exactly.
Our next source introduces us to Lisa Guerrero, a therapist who specializes in grief and trauma.
Okay.
And she brings up something I think is so important, how our society just doesn't handle conversations about grief very well.
Yeah, Lisa's right. We live in a culture that wants us to move on quickly. And that makes it so hard to process grief authentically and at your own pace.
It's like there's this pressure to have it all together and not burden anyone with your sadness.
Right. And as Lisa points out, that can lead to people feeling really isolated in their experience.
It's like they have to hide their pain or pretend they're over it.
Exactly. It's like we've created this taboo around grief.
Yeah.
And that silence can be so isolating and damaging.
And the truth is there's no timeline for healing.
Nope.
Grief isn't a linear process with a clear ending point.
It's more like waves, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes they're crashing and sometimes they're gentle.
I like that.
And it's important to honor that individual journey without judgment or expectations.
Absolutely. And that's why Lisa's emphasis on seeking support is so important.
Yeah.
Whether it's leaning on friends, joining a support group, or talking to a therapist.
Mm-hmm. Having that space to share your experience and connect with others who understand can make all the difference.
It's a reminder that you don't have to go through this alone, which brings us back to that idea of shared experiences.
Right. Hearing other people's stories, sharing your own, and realizing you're not alone in your pain can be so validating.
It normalizes the grieving process.
Exactly. It helps you feel less like you're doing it wrong.
Okay, let's talk about some more practical things. We have some sources that offer some interesting methods for finding peace and strength during those tough times.
Those coping mechanisms are so important, right?
Yeah, like tools to help you navigate the difficult days.
Exactly, like taking a deep breath when you feel overwhelmed.
Absolutely. And the first one that stood out to me is mindfulness meditation.
Okay.
Now, it's not about emptying your mind or forcing yourself to be happy.
Right.
It's more about observing your feelings without judgment.
Mindfulness is such a powerful practice.
Yeah.
You know, it lets you be present with your emotions, even the tough ones.
Yeah.
Without being swept away by them.
You create space between you and the grief.
Exactly.
So you can observe it without being consumed by it.
That's it.
Then there's creative expression, writing, painting, music, anything that helps you give shape to those big, complex emotions.
It's like another language, right?
Yeah.
A way to express yourself when words fail.
Sometimes I just doodle or write in my journal to process things I don't even know how to say out loud.
I get that.
And finally, there's the idea of setting rituals, like lighting candles, visiting their favorite place, or planting a tree in their honor.
Rituals give you a sense of connection and continuity.
Yeah.
You know, a way to honor their memory and incorporate their presence into your life.
And they don't have to be complicated. It's the intention that matters.
Right.
Like after my grandfather passed away, I started making his famous pancakes every Sunday morning.
Oh, that's lovely.
It's simple, but it helps me feel close to him.
It's all about finding those little pockets of comfort and connection that help you navigate that ongoing journey of grief.
Our final source introduces us to Grace, who lost her husband suddenly.
Okay.
And her story really resonated with me. It's about rediscovering yourself after loss, finding the courage to step into a new chapter.
That takes incredible strength.
It does. She talks about feeling lost, unsure if she'd ever find joy again. And
She did.
she did.
She rediscovered herself and found a new purpose, teaching yoga and mindfulness to help others find peace.
Wow, what a beautiful example of finding meaning and purpose after tragedy.
And here's a quote from Grace that really struck me. She said, "Grief will always be a part of me, but it no longer defines me."
That's powerful.
Isn't it?
It speaks to the acceptance and integration that can come with healing.
Grief becomes part of our story, but it doesn't have to be the whole story.
Exactly. We can carry the love and memories with us and still find new paths to joy and purpose.
It's like grief is a thread woven into the tapestry of our lives,
I love that.
but it doesn't have to overshadow all the other colors and patterns.
Beautiful.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into life after loss, what are some key takeaways we can carry with us?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that grief is a journey, not a destination. There's no right or wrong way to grieve and no set timeline for healing. We've been saying it all along, everybody's experience is unique. We heard from Emily, who found comfort in rituals, James, who found purpose in helping others, and Grace, who found strength in rediscovering herself.
And that's what's so amazing about it. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
It's about finding what resonates with you, what helps you honor the person you've lost, and what helps you move forward in a way that feels right for you.
But another thing that really stood out to me was the importance of support.
Oh, huge.
Friends, family support groups, therapy, having those people to lean on can make such a difference.
Absolutely. We're not meant to go through this alone.
Yeah.
Sharing your experience, connecting with others, getting guidance from people who really get it can be so helpful.
And remember all those practical tips we talked about: mindfulness, creative expression, setting rituals. Those can be so powerful.
Yeah. They're like tools in your toolkit.
Right.
Ways to manage those tough emotions. Honor the person you lost and find ways to kind of keep them with you.
Okay, before we go, I have one final thought that's been kind of swirling around in my head. We talked a lot about how grief can be transformative, how it can lead to growth and change.
Right.
But what about the ripple effect? How might the way we grieve impact the people around us?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Our journey through grief can definitely influence how other people see loss and how they cope with their own experiences.
It's like we become examples
Yeah.
of how to navigate those really tough emotions.
Right. And that brings us to a really hopeful note.
Yeah.
Healing is possible.
It is.
It takes time and courage and a lot of support, but you can find a path forward that honors the past while embracing the future.
And that's the message I hope you take away from this deep dive today. You're not alone. There are resources out there, people who understand, and a path toward healing, even when it feels impossible to see.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of life after loss.
Take care of yourselves, everyone, and until next time, remember, you don't have to go through this alone.